Come, your food ready.
Right now it look like we have to outsmart the AI. But wait, I really want dege dumpling you give me.
Me I wonder if AI can make one deep fake dumpling for you.
To learn more about deepfakes, visit www.broadcastingcommission.org.
Attention motorists, it's time to switch to the T-Tag on Transjam highways. Vehicles using the automated T-Tag lane are processed in seconds, so you can pass through the toll plazas far quicker. The T-Tag makes it quicker, more cost-efficient, and safer for our customers. So switch to the T-Tag today and experience the convenience. T-Tag packages are discounted to only $1,500, including a $500 toll credit from now until March 31st.
We a big deal when we touch ground. Yeah, I can see what we're pulling up. Anything for the taste what we love. Barbecue, spicy and original, flavorful, crispy, irresistible. 3 piece with the fries and a Pepsi. Go get your one big deal, stop stress me. All of me dip on the toilet, now left foot. It's a big deal. Anything for the taste of a juicy, crunchy, irresistible KFC, big deal. 3 pieces of delicious chicken, fries and Pepsi. KFC, it's finger licking good.
Win with love. Use your JMMB Money Transfer Prepaid Visa Card from October 1, 2024 to June 30, 2025 for a chance to win your share of a $2.1 million grand prize, plus a $100,000 university cash grant and cash back from paying tolls and shopping with your card. Receive money 24/7 in minutes with Visa Direct via MoneyGram, Zoom, Remitly, or directly through RIA and Zoom. Visit jm.jmmb.com/money-transfer for full details on how to enter and win with love. Authorized under Section 58.3 of the Betting, Gaming, and Lotteries Act. Conditions apply.
Hurt less with Pharma Joint Flex. Taking Pharma Joint Flex daily helps to repair, replenish, and revitalize worn, damaged cartilage that causes joint pain. Do you suffer from arthritis and chronic joint pain? Then Pharma Joint Flex is the remedy for you. Our all-natural formula contains glucosamine and chondroitin, ingredients for joint repair, so you can get relief. Ask your pharmacist or doctor for Pharma Joint Flex, distributed by Massey.
Apply for your Sagicor Bank Preferred Prepaid MasterCard today. Load your remittances for everyday spending. Receive cash transfers from any local bank. The time by Sagicor Bank is
7:30. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us here for Nationwide at 5. This, I'm going to call it a marathon Thursday. The Prime Minister concluded his 10th contribution to the budget debate about 5 minutes ago.
Yes, about a 5-hour presentation about thereabouts.
Yeah, in the House of Representatives. I'm Ricardo Brooks.
And I'm Siobhan Campbell.
What did you make of it, Siobhan?
It was clearly a election year budget presentation. It had everything that targeted at least one aspect of somebody's life and every social category and economic category in the country. Overall, the presentation definitely hit the notes that it needed to hit in terms of who will be getting what. But I think one aspect of the presentation that could have been stronger, and I can see where he was going with it, was housing. Because, yes, they've increased the loan limit. They've also adjusted some other aspects of the housing area. But I feel he could have done more in terms of explaining, for example, the rent-to-own initiative as espoused by Mark Golding, as we were told yesterday by Marlon Morgan that a similar program was in train under the JLP administration. I'd love to have heard about that, because I think two categories of people in the housing market that aren't well serviced are youth and those on the lower wage scale. While he did try to suggest that the NHT is going to now pivot to the ensuring that those affordable housing categories are met at the $14 million mark, I feel there was more he could have said to assist those individuals in getting that mortgage loan.
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to start where he concluded, the Prime Minister. He said to those watching, to the Jamaican people, this year will be a year of decision.
Yes.
And that we will have a choice to make. And he said, choose wisely, choose rationally. On Tuesday, I said I thought Mr. Golding had created the outlines, the sketches of what could shape up to be a debate. I think this afternoon, as I expected, the Prime Minister responded, offered his rebuttal. It was forceful, it was effective, and I think when we say, give us vision, lest we perish, Andrew Holness, for the 10th time, gave vision to the Jamaican people.
And
now,
go ahead.
Yeah, whether or not they buy into it is another thing. But you could see that he's now a settled Prime Minister, a seasoned Prime Minister, a Prime Minister who has a comprehensive grasp of all sectors of the society, the economy, and more importantly, is clear and settled in his own mind as to where he wants to take the country. Because, there's a way in which politicians can say, a third term is loading or give us another chance. And then you ask yourself, give you another chance to do what? Is it power for its own sake or to its own ends? I think this afternoon, he showed us, told us, charted a way forward that said to the Jamaican people, yes, I have had a decade at the wheel, but I have further to go. And more importantly, I know exactly where I want to go. I think you said it was an election budget. Is that what you told me?
Yes.
Right. There was that. But again, not in the...
He looks beyond that, though.
Precisely. Not in the limited scope of, I just need to win. It wasn't just about that, but sure, there were the incentives, the goodies, and I suppose we'll get to talk about that, and there'll be more of that tomorrow morning. There was that, but for me, the takeaway is that Jamaica is being led, and I do not say this lightly, by a visionary. And I think that, again, I have to cite my age, 37. Siobhan is also 37, listeners. He's going to try to say that he's younger. But for me, that is the most important thing that I will take away from his tenure as Prime Minister whenever it comes to an end. That as a young Jamaican, I understand very clearly where this man intends to lead me and intends to lead this country.
And on that same aspect, though, I like his attempt to go back into the past, Jamaica's economic past, and how important it is in terms of setting the course for the future. Because I said it yesterday, this pointless quibbling about where did economic prudence start, and he actually outlined properly Jamaica's 62 years of economic pressures, how we fought to get where we are today, how all individuals who took part in that came about. He acknowledged Peter Phillips, he acknowledged Portia Simpson Miller, but he made sure to acknowledge Audley Shaw and Nigel Clark, as well as the Jamaican people, because ultimately it was the Jamaican people who made that sacrifice to get us here. And this constant attempt, I know he made the funny little quip about paternity for fiscal prudence, but this constant attempt to try and say, well, we started it, you didn't, you messed it up. He finally moved away from that to say, we have all contributed to the problem, but we've all worked together to fix it. Although he still scored the political point to say that the vast majority of the problem still happened under the People's National Party. But he delivered it in such a way that it was a concise message that this is the work of the Jamaican people. And I really appreciated that.
No, and if I could just say some more about the point of being a visionary. There's this question, always this question of things hard. Nothing not gone, we not feel it. It's a refrain you hear a lot. I think this afternoon he tried very hard and, in my estimation, succeeded in showing the link between macroeconomic stability, which he says can nyam.
Yes, statistics can nyam.
Right, and development, which is all-encompassing. Not development that is trivial, that is for the short term, that makes you feel good now, and then down the road there's hardship. He showed you how if you stabilize and stick to the path that we're on, there can be long-term benefits that will accrue to all of us. He talked about roads. He talked about maintenance of infrastructure. He talks about disinvestment that has happened. Talk about the fact that why do you think so much is crumbling and we are having to fix it? No, it was because there was so much disinvestment for so long because we simply could not afford, right, to maintain the infrastructure. That's important. And if anybody's listening to me, especially Jamaicans my age, because I feel like I need to talk to Jamaicans my age, our age, that is so important. Because yes, I appreciate that people might say, I have a hard time with it now. Right. And I appreciate that. I do not for a second trivialize that. But if we are to develop as a collective, as a people, as a country, then we're going to have to think about it from a big picture approach. And again, I keep going back to the word of visionary. He has a vision of how that happens. I appreciated it this afternoon.
And before we get to the guest, I still have to say and highlight, these are my specific points in the presentation that I have to highlight it. There was the juxtaposition between the PNP's administration of the economy and his. Mm-hmm. There was also the announcement of that solidarity program for the Jamaicans, reaching out to those Jamaicans who may not benefit from PATH, may not benefit from some social program, but providing them with a little something to get them through a very difficult time. 50,000 Jamaicans, he suggested. I think that was very splendid.
Humanizing the bureaucracy almost. He says the state cares. So he sort of personified the state and said to Jamaican people, we stand in, what's the term now? It's solidarity. Is that
yes,
program?
solidarity.
Another program with another catchy name. But sort of humanizing the state to say, it stands with you. It's not this alien, unfeeling, uncaring, just throwing statistics at you kind of thing. But we understand, and we're doing our best to come to your aid.
I complain about these acronyms, but the SPEED initiative and outlining as the first aspect of that change in how certificates for motor vehicles is done. I understand that so many people have called me and sent me a message about that specific thing.
Yes, because it can be a burden.
Oh my God, thank you so much.
Because sometimes you forget. And then there's the rush on the tax office and you have to wait in the line. So it can be burdensome. So I understand the effort at efficiency.
But I do want some more clarity on that specific initiative because the way he worded it suggests to me that it's not that you're going to pay the same price that you would for the 1-year certificate over the course of each year for 5 years, but it seems it would be more that you're going to pay the conglomerate of 5 years worth for a 5-year certificate. I want to know if that is the case because it might take some of the wind out of the sails there. But I can still see it would save you so much time because I don't think anybody is fond of standing in the line at the Registrar General.
Can you recall the minimum wage being increased so often over such a short period of time? Because it almost feels, and I may be wrong on this, but it almost feels like it's now being increased annually.
I think it was increased at regular intervals, but I think it's more the size of the increase, which is quite important because I don't think there's been this level of increases in the minimum wage over a 9-year period in any point in Jamaica's history.
Yeah. And he ended, which in my estimation again, was sort of, the start of the case that he will make to the Jamaican people. You will have a choice to make. It's a year of decision, and you'll have to choose and choose wisely. Mr. Golding, sitting there in the beginning, almost stewing, because obviously he threw his darts on Tuesday. And the Prime Minister, I wouldn't call those darts. Those were... boulders were thrown across the aisles. So he responded really forcefully to Mr. Golding's characterizations.
Because, and this is only my opinion. Mr. Golding may argue, but as much as he was attempting to pretend it did not faze him, you could tell he was really fazed by that characterization, especially pointing to the Daring Bunting and Golding situation and how that organization benefited from the FinSAC situation.
In fact, we should play it. Bugs, in the newscast Wholeness on Finsac. And yes, listeners, we had a full newscast prepared for you, ready to go. We thought the Prime Minister would have wrapped at about 5:30. We were ready to go. No, Mr. Wholeness was
Did you take part in the bet? I said it would have been...
No, I didn't.
I lost, though, because I said it would have been just before 7 o'clock. And I... so you
No.
I was off.
Wholeness on Finsac. I want you to go to the... No, sorry, not Wholeness on Finsac. My bad. It's the story that follows it. Yes. So right. So the first clip. Here are some questions the Prime Minister posed listeners very pointedly on the floor this afternoon.
Largest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich since slavery. Madam Speaker, who were the beneficiaries of this wealth transfer from the poor to the rich? Is there anyone in this house who was a part of this ill-conceived policy, whose business it was to profit from the great transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich?
Play the next one.
The DNA test was done. The results are in. When it comes to 15-year-old fiscal discipline, PNP, you are not the father. Yes, your name call, but it is another Golding that is the father.
I thought that was a particularly devastating part of the presentation, and it reminded me of Vintage Wholeness, the campaigner, right? The person who can rile up a crowd, who can connect. And I think, again, the campaign is going to be so interesting because obviously he has his lines of attack sharpened, very pointed, and I think this is one of the first times, I can't recall another time, we have heard him so directly while Mr. Golding was sitting there. By the way, transfixed on his phone. Not once did he meet the Prime Minister's gaze while the Prime Minister steered him down to ask the question.
That's always the
but after a while, you wonder what really is on the phone. You really wonder what he's reading so long, especially when he said who, and the government members echoed the who. I thought it was very effective, very strong. But Books tells me we have to take a break. We haven't taken any breaks in about 5 hours. Let's take one and come back.
Digicel, live life your way, no for what? Digicel postpaid. With Digicel postpaid, it's all about you. Sign up or pay your bills to stay active for a chance to win a luxurious all-expense paid trip for two to Royalton, Antigua. With round-trip flights on us, every week you could win exciting prizes. Event tickets, gym memberships, spa packages, excursion adventures, restaurant vouchers, and more. When you opt in on the My Digicel app, life your way starts now with Digicel. Better connected.
Promotion ends March 31. Authorized under Section 58.3 of the Betting, Gaming, and Lotteries Act.
Multi-link, access every time, everywhere I go. Multi-link, 24/7 access for me. It's just a win-win when we use multi-link. This card is Jamaican built, yeah. Fast and secure, you can use anywhere. Spend while supporting the economy. Look for the multi-link logo on your card and benefit from Jamaica's largest debit payment network. Multi-link, 24/7 access for me.
What would I do without my multi-link?
Valia, we a big deal when we touch ground. Yeah, I can see what we're pulling up. Anything for the taste what we love. Barbecue, spicy and original, flavorful, crispy, irresistible. 3-piece with the fries and a Pepsi. Go get your one big deal, stop stress me. All when we dip on the toilet, no left foot. It's a big deal.
Anything for the taste of a juicy, crunchy, irresistible KFC, big deal. 3 pieces of delicious chicken, fries and Pepsi. KFC, it's finger licking good.
March into savings with ATL's March Madness Sale. Get up to 50% off select appliances, electronics, and hard-to-find parts all month long. Upgrade your home and business with everything you need at unbeatable prices and best quality brands. Shop in store at Kingston, Ocherias, and Montego Bay. Or beat the traffic and buy online at atljamaica.com and get all and wider delivery. ATL, the best brands, the best service. Sale ends March 31 while stocks last. Conditions apply.
Plug into the sun with Peak Energy Solutions. We are your affordable provider for everything solar. Grid tie or off-grid solar P systems, solar air conditioners, panels, lithium batteries, solar supplies, and installation. Visit us at Shop 1, 3 Mosquito Valley Road, Red Hills, St. Andrew. Call 876-279-8820 or 944-0668. Or email us at peakenergysolutionsja@gmail.com. Peak Energy for everything solar.
Fall in love with a new Mazda. From now until March 31, drive away an elegant CX-60, a majestic CX-90, or a nimble CX-5 and get a 2-year service package, 1 year free insurance, free license and registration, plus free window tinting. Conditions apply. Give in to temptation. Visit Executive Motors today. Mazda. Love at first drive.
I pursue opportunities.
I prepare for opportunities.
I plan for opportunities.
With Sagicor e-Invest, you can prepare, plan for, and pursue IPO opportunities. Browse IPOs, review IPO details and prospectuses. Select and apply for a featured IPO.
IPO.
With Sagicor e-Invest. Think wealth. Visit sagicor.com.
Back with you here on Nationwide at 5. I'm Ricardo Brooks.
And I'm Siobhan Campbell.
And again, Siobhan, the outline, sketches, broad strokes of the election campaign, of the messaging, was also embedded in the speech. The question I was asking myself as I listened to him: how does the PMP respond in a substantive way to not just the government saying we're going to do these things, but the government saying we're going to do these things with evidence to back that they have a record of delivering? How does an opposition party counter that beyond saying to the Jamaican people, I'm going to give you exactly what you need right now? I don't know. It seems to me that becomes a very difficult proposition.
I can see what they will most likely fall back on the notion that, well, you've been there for 9 years, why are you just now delivering? You can also see them say that, well, this did not go far enough, etc., etc. It's the usual avenues of attack, but I think what the real question will be to the Jamaican people is, based on what the Prime Minister has done in the last, let's call it a decade, and based on what he has outlined as his priorities now going into the next financial year, are you, as the average Jamaican, satisfied that this is where your future lies? Or do you believe that what the opposition through Julian Robinson and Mark Golding delivered on their previous days presents a better opportunity for you going forward? I think that is going to be the important thing on every Jamaican's mind after tonight.
Yeah, and I think if the choice and the decision, as the Prime Minister says, is wise and rational, I think it becomes increasingly difficult to say you will, to borrow from a previous campaign, change course. I think it becomes a very difficult proposition. Not impossible, but difficult. Because you're going to promise what you say you can do as opposed to what has been done. Clear evidence. And then again, and I don't mean to belabor the word, but I keep going back to it. Vision. Clear vision as to where this government, this Prime Minister wants to go.
And it should be reminded that these initiatives come into effect most by September or July of 2025, which suggests to me then that they have all been costed in the current budget.
Right.
And I think, and forgive me, listeners, I have to draw this comparison. While I understand now that the opposition has outlined some attempts at providing clarity on how they're going to cost their initiatives, we know that the budget coming up 2025-2026 has been costed, and these initiatives announced for September and July 1 have been taken into consideration and are now achievable within that framework.
I was very impressed by the announcement of the rural school bus system. I didn't
knocked the wind out of a sails out of a previous announcement.
But I also didn't realize that the government had been so far advanced on the planning, we certainly didn't get that impression. It felt like it was a little ways away.
No, credit to Daryl Vaz. He had made it clear that it was in the works.
Right, but it certainly felt like it was a little more ways away than September.
True, but it seems that they've been working on it quietly in the background, and he even showed you the bus parked there at the bus terminus along with other JUTC buses. So it's quite clear that this was in train, and they've just been quietly plucking away at it in the background.
Yeah, that could potentially be a game changer once it starts in September. And the truth is that, you know, the rural students and their parents, because when they find out how much it costs sometimes for rural transportation, they deserve it.
And it's a reminder that they too subsidize the JUTC through their taxes.
Indeed. There were so many announcement listeners. I'm going through the list to just see what headline ones I can just throw at you, because it was a substantive presentation. Rebuttals up top, and then the Prime Minister got into it broadly, categorized under the Aspire theme, ASPIRE, and each section dealing with a letter of Aspire. So I'm going through the list, I'm scrolling. I mean, sure, George and Tana will have much more detailed analysis for you tomorrow. As you can imagine, we were listening, preparing the newscast in terms of all that was announced. But it was substantial, and each time you thought he was done, there was
another point.
There was another announcement that came.
And just to say, Ricardo, I appreciate one aspect that I said, and I'm sure we'll get more from Favour Williams come next week, Tuesday. Mm-hmm. The aspect of the securitization.
Yes.
I am very pleased that he addressed it.
He did.
The utilization of future revenues to fund projects. Now, he made it clear this was done for the sake of improving Jamaica's infrastructure. And when you ask any economist what drives growth in country, it is improvements in infrastructure. And he outlined that yes, there are further purchases to be made, further such deals to be made, and what those deals will be used to fund, and that is for infrastructure and further development of the country. And I think it was important to drive that point home. We're not just throwing away money for the sake of plugging some hole in a budget. It's being done strategically to satisfy initiative. And I also like that he pointed out that the previous administration attempted to do this to disastrous consequences, and he made sure to draw that line into what his administration is doing and what they did in the past. What was the you're more au fait with the normal pop culture. What was the term you used? They're not like us.
They're not like us.
Yes.
Trick Lamar. There was another section that was impressive to me, Siobhan, the aspects dealing with security, national security. Because, and Bugs, if you could just pull up this one for me. Let me just quickly play for our listeners. It's the one just above the regional story. Yes. Right. So if you could just, because the Prime Minister, listeners, explain the trajectory in terms of the reduction in murders and the successes the security forces have been realizing. And here's what he had to say.
Madam Speaker, today we can say that year to date, murders are at their lowest level in 25 years. The Minister of National Security tells me that we are 33% behind where we were last year. But I still lament that had we the support of the opposition in the use of SOEs, the fall in murders would have been even greater. So let me be clear. The PNP, under this leader of the opposition, can take no credit for the reduction in murders. They have done everything possible to obstruct the government. Everything possible to obstruct the government. And now want to stand up and claim credit.
And the next one.
The success of the SOEs and the ZOZOs came with the support of the opposition at the time. And I here must give credit to the former leader of the opposition, the Honorable Dr. Peter Phillips, who understood their necessity and supported their extension. Since the change in leadership in the opposition in 2020, we have not been able to use the SOEs to full effect, and we saw a 10% spike in murders in 2021. This could have been prevented and lives saved if narrow political interests parading as protecting rights did not blind the current opposition leader to protecting the right to life of the victims of murder by supporting extensions of the SOE.
This is going to be effective messaging. Here is why. He, I thought, went out of his way to credit and acknowledge Dr. Peter Phillips, who at the time as leader of the opposition did lead the opposition to lend support to the extensions. And then Holness sought to say then there was a break. And the current leader of the opposition, aided I suppose by Senator Bunting, took a different track. Yes? And it was interesting to me how he created that kind of
dichotomy,
right, between Dr. Phillips and Mark Golding, and then laid it at Mark Golding's feet to say you did not do enough while your predecessor saw the need, was willing to work with us. I think that's going to be interesting, just on the campaign trail, how that you know.
I'm sure, and I expect that it will be a point that will be challenged very soon by Mark Golding and Peter Bunting. I don't think they'll allow that one to stand.
But what would be the effective challenge, though?
I'm not sure.
Because I mean, certainly Dr. Phillips had started to raise questions about the long-term use. But my recollection is that he continued to support it, even though saying that you need now to try to wrap it up and take another path. Bunting, I recall, was particularly strident. He was in the lower house at the time, and I think I vividly recall once where he did not vote with the opposition when his colleagues voted. And I think that was the beginning of the crack. And then certainly after the 2020 election, there was just a stonewalling. That's my recollection.
I could be corrected, but I'm fairly certain that the break in support for the SOE started under Dr. Peter Phillips. I'm not 100% certain. I'm fairly certain that break started under Dr. Peter Phillips in the waning months of his tenure. Right, that's what I'm saying.
So I recall Bunting voting no, and then the crack started, and then it became a little dicey there. But up to that point, which is what the Prime Minister was saying, there was some amount of
there was
consistent support.
In the early days, but definitely under Mark Golding, it was quite clear there would be no support for any states of public emergency.
All right, that's all the time we have, listeners. As you can imagine, a lot to chew on, a lot to digest. Tomorrow, nationwide this morning, the team will pick it up. And I imagine that the analysis will continue on into next week because it was long, but effective. 5 hours? 5.5 hours? Was it, Siobhan? 5.5 hours?
Closing on 5.5 hours.
So, join us tomorrow. Join George and Tana, and they'll bring you more. Dana Davey, thank you. Bugs, thank you so much. Our colleagues in the newsroom, thank you all. Led by our editor, Cara Powell. I'm Ricardo Brooks.
And I'm Siobhan Campbell.
Good evening.